Hello and welcome to Lesson 6. Lesson 6 from the Psychological Problems unit of work, and we specifically today are going to be looking at Wiles and his CBT study, and we're going to explore whether he felt that actually CBT was a good way of treating people that were suffering from depression. Just a brief reminder of what cognitive behaviour therapy is. It is a therapy that enables the therapist to pinpoint the exact areas of the patient's life where they have built negative stigmas around certain experiences. And it is the job of the therapist to identify those negative stigmas and actually adjust and change, assimilate or accommodate, to use the words of Piaget that we've looked at previously. Okay, let's crack on. I would like you, incidentally, to write notes specifically on what was Wiles's aim of his study, what was his study type. Please make a record of his method. What were his results? And finally, penultimately, the conclusion. What did he conclude on the back of his results? And finally, evaluation. Any strengths, any weaknesses with his study, or was it completely watertight? So the aim of the study was to investigate the effectiveness of cognitive behaviour therapy when treating depressed people who did not show improvement for taking medication. So there had been a long period of time on which they had been on antidepressants. In fact, they had been taking it for over 6 weeks, and the patient had shown no sign of improvement. And it was these particular patients that were chosen. So otherwise we would have no control. Do you see what I mean? We wouldn't really know whether that particular variable, the CBT, actually was effective or not if we just tried it on brand new patients that were coming through the doctor's through the GP to the GP. The study type. The study was a longitudinal field experiment. This is a posh name for saying that actually it was over a very long period of time that Wiles conducted his study. In fact, it was over 6 months, hence longitudinal. And it was field because other than the issuing of this cognitive behaviour therapy, the psychologists had no control over any of the other extraneous variables, over whether they really did take their medication or what time they were getting to sleep or whether they attended therapy. So it was a field study. And all of the patients, or all the participants, I should say, lived in the UK and were aged between 18 and 75 years of age. Okay, the method. Patient participants were randomly allocated to one of 2 groups. Group one was what we call an experimental group, and it consisted of 234 participants. So the sample's quite big. These 234 participants were allocated to receive cognitive behaviour therapy. In addition, they did have antidepressant medication alongside. Okay, this was our experimental group. The control group, now this is the group that would do the same thing. This is so we can measure a difference between, if there is one, between the control group and the experimental group. If we had them both all doing CBT, we wouldn't know really if there was any marked difference or not. This group consisted broadly of the same number of participants, not 234, but 235 were in the control group, and they were allocated to take their normal antidepressant medication as always. Okay. The only significant difference between the 2 groups was the second did not receive CBT. Fairly straightforward. Now, the final bit of the method, participants in the CBT group received 12 1-hour individual CBT sessions, okay, from a trained therapist with regular follow-up. So there was 12 over a series of 6 months. The results were, after 6 months, 90% of participants were followed up. There was a 10% dropout rate for various reasons. And the researchers found that 46% of the group who did receive CBT showed a notable signs of improvement in symptoms compared to only 22% of the group that continued just with medication. And this was, as I say, this was after a 6 month period. The conclusions that Wiles drew were when CBT is used in addition to antidepressants and normal medical care, it certainly is an effective way of reducing symptoms of depression for those people who do not respond well to antidepressants alone. Okay, sorry. So some big positives there with Wiles is that his experiment really did seem to show that CBT was instrumental in really helping patients that were previously not really progressing in terms of their condition. But secondly, it was hardly definitive in the number of patients that did improve. We're not talking like 90% suddenly showed marked improvement. In fact, it was only, if we just go back, it was just 46% of patients did testify to feeling better. I mean, if you were to get 46% in a test, you wouldn't be like hugely stoked or happy about it. You could say the sample size was good, and it certainly does have ecological validity in the sense that patients were just left to their own devices to continue with their everyday lives. So but as a result, you really couldn't control extraneous variables. Patients may not have improved as well, or some of the patients may not have made marked improvements because perhaps they might have some kind of substance abuse and stuff, and so CBT possibly was never going to work in the first place. Okay, guys, so what I'd like you to do, as already said, could you make sure, please, that you get down the aim, the method, the result, conclusion, and evaluation, please, for Wiles. Good luck.